earlier this year, in the midst of reading over some statistics about how the IOLA anti-imaging names affects players, I found myself wondering how they affect the people who make them. We regularly celebrate the artists and animators who pepper games with the lovely and the magnificent. I rarely hear much about the people who spend their days creating the gruesome, disgusting, and just plain gross aspects of contemporary games. I am not just thinking of horror games here developing in the nasty sci-fi shooter, like Halo, requires that some folks in the team spend significant amounts of time poring over pretty gruesome reference material in order to create disquieting monsters and levels. To do their jobs well, some developers spend a surprising amount of time studying disgusting material for their day job. They are rarely celebrated, and it's even rarer that they talk openly about how their work affects them personally. While I do not have any meaningful stats to share on this topic, I do have some stories to share that help shed some light on what it can be like to be an artist on a matter of thing, to lay some detail on a big project. Former Halo artist Vic Dalian has seen some of the more gruesome aspects of his day job spill over into his personal life. While working on Halo 3 as an environment artist, Dalian found himself tasked with helping to create a level in which players explore a Covenant ship infested by the parasitic flood. Till such levels would make it into the final game, I took 2 weeks to gather a bunch of different reference images, scientific stuff, biological stuff, a lot of just really gross stuff, recalls Dalian. We wanted a lot of long stringy tunnels, and I deep-bottomed the idea of looking at colonoscopy videos for reference. So I was watching all these colonoscopy videos to get ideas on what I could do to mimic their style. That feeling of being inside something. The flood-infested Cortana level from Halo 3. Dalian did not stop there, either. The former Halo dev says he started studying images of tumors and other lesions in order to get an idea of how to texture and sculpt in-game surfaces, then took a deep dive into mycology reports to study the grossest germs and slime molds he could find. I remember looking at different types of gross biological things and saying, okay, we can integrate this and that, but not that. And then later in the day, I would suddenly start thinking about these super gross images, just out of nowhere, says Dalian. My tolerance is pretty high, but I would still, all of a sudden, just be overcome with nausea. It was a rough couple of weeks. Like other artists I have spoken to, Dalian says he was surprised at how studying this sort of repugnant reference material led to a change in his mental state. Despite feeling like he has a higher than average tolerance for disgusting images, I was a bio major in college. The artist found these images seeping into his day-to-day life. They did come up when I was least expecting it. Something would just pop into my head, an image, or something, and for a while there I felt, I would not say traumatized, but haunted, like when you are a kid and you see something really disgusting or gory, or scary with, says Dalian. I started associating that level with feeling disgusting. Once it was built, it took months and months of polishing, and in those months, I could not wait to work on something else. The level was so disgusting, and what I thought was neat at first really came to bear down on me. Dalian's fellow developers were not unsympathetic either, though they eventually also learned to steer clear of his desk if they did not want to ruin their lunch. People would walk by my desk, and just like shiver or scream, says Dalian, recalling that it became a standing office joke that people would avoid looking at his monitor while passing or visiting his desk. I was working on that level for 8 months. So for 8 months, people had to step real carefully around me. While Dalian moved on to work on other projects, his strategy for coping with the mental stress of working on that flood level wound up living into a permanent part of his personal life. I started looking at other scary images, but images that were not particularly gross, gory or gruesome. Classic stuff like Frankenstein, or the old Romero Night of the Living Dead stuff, says Dalian. I try to look at those things and get back in touch with my childhood fears, because at least I can manage that. I figured if I could reintroduce some of the old stuff that used to scare me into my mind, maybe some of the new stuff would not affect me so strongly. And it worked sort of. Dalian's coping mechanism grew into a renewed fascination with classic horror, and he began posting a vintage horror image to Twitter every night before bed. People kept asking for more, and now the spooky image post is part of Dalian's evening ritual. I am telling you, man, it's now been 6 years of me, every night, posting a scary picture on my Twitter account at 10 o'clock, says Dalian. When I ask him if he's sleeping better or worse in the years since he started the ritual, he answers without a moment's hesitation. Better. For sure. I have completely desensitized myself to this stuff now. I am the proud owner of a human kidney. Wait, what? It's a long story, Dalian says, with a laugh. He explains that a friend in New York was going through a collection of university cast-offs that had gone to auction, and spotted a misshapen flashy thing in a jar. Knowing Dalian's background as a biology major and his fascination with oddities, he gave the artist a ring. He did not know what it was, or that it was a human kidney, and $100 later, I am now the proud owner of a preserved kidney, says Dalian. I had some weird stuff before, for sure, but I'd like to think that I took it to the next level, and became even weirder thanks to working on that level. Animator Steve Bowler, by contrast, says his time spent animating fatalities on X-ray attacks in NETHERE 2011 Mortal Kombat did not have a meaningful adverse effect on his life. A lot of the time, while we are working on these things, there's this degree of separation. He tells me, as a Mortal Kombat animator, he mostly found himself working with the actual character model of Undertaker, and just a blank, featureless view of female model, we called it naked guy, in place of the victim. So while the motions and stuff were gruesome and violent, we had this detachment, because it was like, well, I am just attacking this plain dude, even though I am ripping his arm off. It's clean. There's no gore. There's no blood, says Bowler. It's almost like the system we created to just get through the work also sort of protected us from the hyper-violent, disgusting aspects of it. An X-ray attack in Mortal Kombat 9. I tell him about Dalian's deep dive into colonoscopy videos, and over the phone I can almost hear Bowler wince. I think artists have it the worst, he says, and tells the story of how even the most grisly sequences can appear outlandish and cartoony from an animator's perspective. An animator next to me worked on a disembowelment animation for an MK9 fatality, and the intestines he was animating were basically just represented as a chain of bones, because it was the only way we had to animate them. Recalls Bowler, the end result was really gruesome. People would see it and say, "Oh my god, that looks horrible." But to the animator working on it, it was just an abstraction. Whereas the artist on that, he had to painstakingly model that intestine. Still, Bowler suggests that working on hyper-violent games, A sustained period of time desensitizes you as a person, even if you are not an artist or an animator. He compares it to an Andy Warhol exhibit that once came through Chicago. I believe his remembering was Roth's death and disaster series, which guided visitors through a series of increasingly more shocking and gruesome images of accident scenes.